It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is John Costello, President and CEO of Cherry's Industrial Equipment Corporation. John is responsible for the overall development and success of the company and has experience in every aspect of the company's operations. He started out as a sales assistant and moved up through the ranks to manager, partner, and sole owner during his 28-year tenure. John lives in Illinois with his wife, Kim, 3 beautiful kids, Jack, Grace, and Leah, and their dog, Millie, who is adored and loved by all. John attended Northern Illinois University, where he received his degree in marketing. He enjoys swimming and competes in 5K open water swims and Masters state and national champion meets, holding top 10 times in many events. John Costello, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks for having me, Brant. I'm really excited about today.
Great to have you here. And, we spoke a few weeks ago and great to catch up live here. And we always like to kick off our podcast understanding a little bit about the early years of our CEO guests. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Chicagoland area. I'm one of 7.
Wow, big family.
4 brothers, 2 sisters. Yeah, Irish Catholic family.
Nice.
And we grew up where we all worked. My mom and dad were entrepreneurs. So at a very, very young age, I think I started working for my dad when I was 9 years old.
Wow. Where are you in the pecking order? Are you the oldest, youngest, in the middle?
I'm the oldest boy.
Oldest boy, okay.
Second oldest.
Yeah.
And we were like hyper competitive when it came to everything. We were involved in sports, and everything was a game. My dad was pretty good at a couple of things, of like, young age of showing us the value of a dollar, getting us involved in a business very, very, very young.
Yeah. What kind of business was it? What did he?
He owned a couple of businesses. One of them was a newspaper agency. So, when you talk about paper boys, we were the cleanup crew. So any of the papers that weren't delivered, me and my siblings would go out and deliver. And
okay.
Yeah, so it was I wouldn't say it was enjoyable because we were working from like 3 o'clock in the morning till like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, big family. Everybody had to chip in. So he had that business, and then he had a couple of retail stores later in life, and then sold the newspaper agency. And I think that's kind of where I got the bug of being an entrepreneur, a business owner.
Yeah. Were you all a couple of years apart growing up?
So, again, I think things are so much different now. The difference in age is there's 7 kids in 10 years.
Wow.
And my mom always talks about, she had... So she got married when she was 19. So when she was 29, she had 7 kids. Could you even imagine that?
Imagine. I don't think I had my first kid till I was 30, and not that much younger than your parents, but
same with me, right?
So she was a busy mom all those years. Did she go back into the workforce laiter?
She did. She ran one of the retail stores.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, early on, she would laugh. I mean, we were churchgoers, and she would say, she would, because my dad was working, and she'd say, by the time I started on the first kid and helped them get ready for church, by the time I got to the seventh, the first one was naked again, and I'd have to start all over. Right?
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
What a crazy time. And were you in a rural community? Kind of
We were in the
suburbs.
suburbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were closer to the city, and then my parents moved a little further west.
Yeah.
Really kind of a stretch to move to the community, but that was so we could get a better education.
Sure.
And I think my parents probably like others that are listening, they really sacrificed, so we would have a
Yeah.
better starting point in life.
Imagine. Parochial schools, public schools.
Yeah, we went to Catholic grade
Yeah.
school,
Right.
and I went to Catholic high school for a year, and then transferred into a public school. Me and my siblings, we were all swimmers, competitive swimmers,
Oh, wow.
and
Cool.
so we were recruited very highly because they
Yeah.
figured if they
Imagine.
got one, they got seven, right? So
I love it.
yeah,
Did you do that through high school and college? Or
yeah,
something?
I did that through high school
Yeah.
and college. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Who were some of the early, or what were maybe some of the early inspirations from your childhood that you recall?
We went through this exercise here recently. I mean, just really over the weekend, and I always ask people this. If you kind of growing up, how were things prioritized? And
Right.
like in our family, it was family, God, work,
Yeah.
sports, school, right? So most of the influences that I had were like my dad was my mentor.
Right.
Teachers, more of like the priest, those were early on, big influences. And then coaches, we
Right.
had
Right.
kind of the best coaches out there. And then, I mean, I have such fond memories of a couple of the coaches that I had that they just pushed you beyond what you thought you could do.
Mm.
I hated it when I was doing it, but you look back and you say, yeah, that really kind of developed me into the person that I am.
Right. Right. Were you a good student in school?
I was a CB student.
Okay. All right.
I think kind of later on in life, it's the same thing that I tell my kids is, it wasn't a priority. I wish it was. I think I just created some, I don't want to say issues, but just some different,
Priorities.
challenges, later
Right.
in life, right? If I could go
Yeah.
back to sixth grade math, I think I would be a much better student, or I would have been a much better student.
Were there actually, did you have the nun teachers back then?
We did, yeah.
Yeah.
We had
Yeah.
nun teachers, and I think I
Rulers
was more.
out, hands being slapped, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we wouldn't let you get below a C, John. I'm sure they were good about that.
They were pushing, right? They
Yeah, I
certainly were
imagine.
pushing.
I
It was
imagine.
the problem was just going home and not doing the homework. That was the
Right. Sure.
If I could have gone back and
Distractions.
done that, it would have been better.
Yeah. So you mentioned swimming. Any other sports you got involved with in school, or
Yeah,
other
we were
activities?
involved in just about everything,
Yeah.
So swimming, baseball, track. I had some of my siblings were in wrestling, but
Right.
swimming, it's one of those sports that even back then it was hard to do other things because we
Yeah.
were swimming
Yeah.
2 times a day, and
Right. Right.
it was really a full-time job, and
Yeah.
we were swimming at a pretty high level. We were.
Yeah.
I think me and one of my brothers, we didn't know this at the time, but they used to have something called Junior Olympics, and
Yeah.
we would compete. We would do very, very well. I mean, we just didn't know we were that good until
Right. Right.
later in life.
Yeah. Do you still swim? Is that something you've kept up
I
as a
do, yeah.
lifelong exercise? Yeah, it's a great
I
sport.
compete. Yeah, I
So you
swam
still
this
compete?
morning.
Good.
Yeah, I
Cool.
still compete. There's
Yeah.
masters swimming, and
Sure.
I swim state this last year. I didn't do nationals,
Yes.
but yeah,
Cool.
it's awesome.
It's a
really
great
is.
sport. It's hard work. It's like rowing. I had one of my daughters was a rower, and early in the morning, get to go to workout. I love it because I always sweat when I work out, and I think
Yeah.
when I swim, it just keeps me cooler, and I love it as an exercise. I just think it's been a great sport.
I think for me, it's just it's water to me just kind of kind of erases
Yeah.
whatever emotions I'm having. good
Yeah,
or bad,
yeah.
right.
Literally wash them away.
It does, seriously. I think it takes me probably 200 or 300 yards, but your face is in the water and you're just,
Yeah.
worried
Yeah.
about, the repeat or flip terms or whatever, and then
Right.
it just
Right.
washes away. So it's very
Love it.
cathartic.
You mentioned entrepreneurial things. What, other than helping dad with the, newspaper subscription business, what other types of things did you do as a kid as an entrepreneur?
We were in scouting,
Yeah.
so we did that. We were always signed up for something,
Yeah.
and I would say, probably through high school, back to my dad's business,
Right.
because that was really the thing is, I turned 16 and I became the weekend manager,
Right. Right.
but
Put you in charge. Yeah.
I think I could say this, and McDonald's isn't going to come back and say anything. My mom got me a job at McDonald's as like a second job,
Right.
and so this was interesting. Like for the first 2 months I was working there, um, they just kept saying, somebody seems to drop you off at the restaurant every day, And so finally the manager said, "Do you have your driver's license?" And I said, "No, I'm 15." And there was just like panic on his face, right? Like,
Oh
you
gosh.
guys are working 40
Labor
hours,
laws.
right? You're working the grill and the French fryer, I mean, we can't do that, right?
Wow.
So we did that, and then I think really on the entrepreneurial side, going into college,
Yeah.
I was always I was in a marketing club and a sales club, and it was always about kind of stretching yourself. I was a president I was in water polo, as president of the water polo
Oh,
club, and
tough sport
um,
too. Yeah.
yeah, and I think maybe because of the younger, doing things at a younger age, um, I was able to negotiate contracts and do
Hmm.
things, in college that I kind of look at my kids today, and I know they could do it, but I don't know if they would feel that comfortable,
Have the opportunity.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so that was you know, I mean, the entrepreneur of it was just this interest in creating something,
Right.
or
Right.
creating something from very little.
Yeah. You went to NIU. Was it a
Hmm.
pretty, determined decision that all you kids would go to college? Mom and dad want that for you. Did mom and dad have a degree? And tell us a little bit about that.
Neither of my parents
Yeah.
did. They were, since they got married early, they didn't finish college.
Right.
And so I had an older sister that went to University of Illinois,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think it's a little different than it is today. I think I looked at three schools, and I went to NIU because that's where I got a swimming scholarship.
Right.
But it
Right.
was it was
Yeah.
pretty much preordained that I was going to go to school.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. And studied marketing, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
I originally started out as a political science major
Right.
because I had aspirations. I got to be careful of saying this. I really thought I was going to be a politician one day,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I started poli sci. I was going to be pre-law, and then quickly realized how boring some of the poli sci classes were. I
It
mean, I
sounds like
just
me in accounting and finance. I had
yeah,
a
they were
similar
just
path.
so dry and so boring, and so far from the entrepreneurial spirit where I
Right.
came from. And so
Right.
it was just natural that I started looking at business and then marketing and sales.
So, John, did you have ambitions for the Olympics? Did you try out? Were you at that level in college?
Yeah, my whole family, we thought we were going to be Olympians. I mean, we grew up watching Mark Spitz and
Right,
and
right.
uh, and seeing that, and I think you get to a certain level and you realize how different the competition is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Later in life, and unfortunately I've kind of maybe forced my kids into this, but we've been to the last two, maybe three Olympic trials, and
Wow.
I got to meet some of the Olympians, and um, I was really lucky. Not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before. Ryan Lochte was in
Oh,
the
yeah.
pool that we swim at, and he gave like a stroke clinic for master swimmers, and so I got to
Nice.
swim right next to Ryan Lochte. So that was so
Super
no,
cool.
I had aspirations, but never made it to the Olympics or to the Olympic trials. But I've been lucky enough to swim with some Olympians.
Yeah, super cool. So, what was that first job you took out of college?
Um, I worked for, this was an interesting company. So I worked for, so at NIU as like a side job, I went and, it was a company that was liquidating furniture stores,
Oh,
and they were based out of a town called Sycamore, which is right next to DeKalb, where I was going to school. And I was just doing it part time, working at the furniture store. And then
right.
when I finished school, they offered me a position as a manager. And with furniture stores, they would, these were going out of business sales,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was
Mm-hmm.
90 days. And I
Yeah.
thought, what the heck, I'll try it out, right? And so you would be there for 90 days and then on to the next spot. So I was in
Right.
New York, and then I went to Virginia, and then went to Fort Lauderdale, and all these interesting
Saw
places.
the country.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and they paid for it. Um, there was obviously some interesting. I think it was 23 at the time, and I wasn't really supposed to. I was supposed to be more of like an assistant manager, and I think the first job that I was on, the general manager, it was 4 stores that we were closing. He was caught drinking on the job,
Ooh.
and I was put in a tough spot where I had to call the owner of the company and tell him, and he flew out to New York and dismissed him, and then he put me in charge of this at 23 years old, right?
Wow. Wow.
I mean, each store, was a $3 or $4 million store. So I'm managing $12 million worth of inventory, trying to turn it,
Gosh.
with kind of very, very little guidance, other than the guidance that I got, when I was younger, of just work the problem and ask questions.
Yeah.
So
And do the right thing. Try to do the
yeah,
right thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
try to do the
Yeah.
right thing. Yeah, so I did
Yeah.
that for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and the grind was just so hard. I mean, they were scaling up, and it was supposed to be 90 days on, 90 days off. So you would get 90 days
Wow.
off, and I never got the 90 days off. So it was really, I mean, it was like 2 years of working straight,
Oh
bell to
my
bell,
gosh.
weekends.
Right.
And then
Still single at the time, John, or
I
were
was
you
still
married?
single at the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and
Thank
I
goodness for
was,
that. You probably would have stayed that way for a while.
yeah, right, right. And then, I tried a couple of different sales jobs, and the way I ended up at Cherry's, at the company that I'm at now,
Yeah.
is I was dating, she's my wife now, but she was my girlfriend then, and we
Yeah.
were dating, and I was in between jobs, or, working a couple of jobs and not really happy. And she was talking to somebody at work, and they said, look, my husband is the general manager at this
Mm.
company, and they're looking for a salesperson. I understand your boyfriend's in sales,
Yeah.
and so I went and interviewed for the job. And I'll tell you what, it was the strangest interview that I've ever been on. He spent like 45 minutes trying to talk me out of the job.
Oh
I'm like,
gosh.
what
Oh
is
gosh.
going
I've
on
heard
here?
that technique used before. That's
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I
And you
think it was
got him.
definitely a technique. And so, the doors open, and other people can hear the conversation. And
Oh my
so
goodness.
maybe like 15 minutes into, I turned to him and I said, I said, are you adding to the staff, or are you replacing? And he goes,
Right. Right.
and the walls are paper thin, right? And he goes, well, we're replacing. And I said,
Oh my
does the
gosh.
guy know? And he goes, he does now. 'Cause,
Oh,
I mean,
jeez.
seriously, 'cause that's how thin the walls were. I was
Oh
like,
my goodness.
oh my gosh,
Wow.
it was the craziest thing. And so
Yeah.
then he said, well, you're gonna have to talk with my uncle who owns the company, and he's a really tough guy to
Mm.
please. And
Mm.
so I met Bud, and Bud said, we talked for maybe an hour, and he said, you're
Yeah.
hired. And I said, look, a couple of the other jobs that I was at, they couldn't make payroll,
Mm.
but we didn't have a contract. I said, can we sign a contract? And he goes, I'm a handshake guy, but sure, if you want a contract, no worries.
Huh.
So he wrote up the contract, and it basically said something to the effect of like, here's your base pay, and if we don't like you in the first 90 days, we're going to fire you. Or if you don't like being here, you leave, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was 29 years ago.
That's amazing. And I
Yeah.
just have to say, John, I think of the 270 plus, 275 plus episodes I've done, you're probably the second CEO
Interestingly, also an industrial company that joined in kind of an account manager position and,
Yeah.
spent 25, 30 years to become CEO. That's really amazing these days. Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, some days I feel like it's last man standing, right? But there's other days, right? People have said you were in a lucky spot, and I said no, I was given an opportunity
Yeah,
and really
yeah,
work the problem and just you know, I mean, the owner was really great at seeing good help,
right,
and
right.
I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but he had
He
a talent with
recognized
that, and
talent.
he
Yeah,
recognized it, and
yeah,
he
yeah.
promoted and mentored. So yeah,
So,
so
so
I,
you
I really
joined in the mid 90s.
yeah, I
Did
started
you?
in
Yeah,
'94,
94.
and
Yeah.
I mean, I really thought that I was gonna, it was just a stepping stone, maybe
That was my
six
next question.
months.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
ever think you'd be CEO in those early days?
No, I mean, I think the first week I was like, what did I get
Yeah.
myself into? Who would
Right.
buy
Right.
this, right? And
Oh
then,
gosh.
I mean, I've told employees this story, and it was back when you would have the TV VCR combo, right? And
Oh
so
sure.
the first
Right.
week they gave me some VHS tapes and said, throw it in there, and this is your training, right? So
Wow.
watching it on an
Yeah.
8-inch screen, looking at this and going, who would buy a pallet inverter, right? Who would buy the
Yeah.
products that we sell?
Right.
And then, what really kind of caught me that first year is the customer base
Yeah.
and, yeah, the business
All
was,
enterprise, right? I mean,
yeah,
large companies for the most part.
all
Yeah. Yeah.
enterprise, right?
Yeah. And they
Yeah.
pay their
And
bills typically, which is a
they
good thing.
do. And,
Yeah.
the other thing that was pretty exciting is we were able as a small company, like 4 people, we were actually changing some of their production processes, so
Wow.
like a company like Hormel, it was really exciting where,
Yeah.
they would give you a problem and we would say, okay, I think we can solve this, but you're going to have to change X, Y, and Z. And then we can bring in, a certain level of automation. And
Right.
just remarkable that such a small organization could make an impact on such a big company. I
And
hadn't
they
been
do it.
around
They'd
then.
make those changes, would they? Yeah.
They
Yeah.
would,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It
Right.
was really a remarkable thing. And it was the list of, from Pfizer to General Mills to
Yeah.
Hormel to
Yeah.
Tyson to Conagra. I mean, you name food or pharma, we were selling to them, or, at
That's
least
awesome.
early on, it was a lot of Johnny Appleseed, but, it was, we were really kind of helping these companies with workplace problems.
Right. Right. Now, you were privately owned at the time, and are you
Hmm.
still today? Did you
Yeah, we're
convert to
still
an ESOP?
privately owned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you an ESOP now, or how did you
No,
transition from the original owner?
we're, it's something that we're exploring.
Yeah.
So again, there's an interesting story. So, Bud, so it was really Bud and the general manager I was telling you about, that was his nephew
Right.
that was interviewing me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, probably 10 years in for me, Bud was getting on years, and he was looking, as every owner is looking at, how am I going to transition?
Right.
His kids weren't involved in the
Mm.
business. His
And
nephew really,
he was the founder,
he was the
correct? The
founder.
original.
Yeah.
Right.
Bud
Right.
was a serial entrepreneur as
Yeah.
well. I
Yeah.
mean, he
Yeah.
had,
Yeah.
by the time that I got at Cherry's, he had bought and sold, or he had founded and sold 3 or 4 companies at that time.
Wow. Amazing.
So I think my the nephew thought the natural transition would be is that Bud would sell it to him,
Hmm.
and Bud approached us and said, look, I have a number in mind. He said, I want to go through a business valuation. Here's the number. Here's
Mm.
where I think the company can cash flow. You know, um, you know, I'm giving you guys, right of first refusal.
Right.
Go to the bank, see if you can finance it. If not, I'm going to find an outside buyer. So,
Wow.
we went to the bank, we leveraged up, we put some money in ourselves, and we bought out Bud.
Wow.
Now, one of the conditions of the sale, and I wish, as we were writing the buy-sell agreement, and even before that, I wish, I going backwards in time, I would have made a change. But one of the conditions is we had to be 50-50 partners.
Oh. Right.
And so that really kind of started the next chapter, which was for about 7 years. The next 7 years, we fought every single day.
Mm.
I mean, we were
Wow.
just not aligned.
Yeah.
we were aligned on, selling because we were both salespeople and
Right.
how to take care of the customer. But he wanted to run the company as a lifestyle business, and I wanted to
Oh,
run it for growth.
right.
And
Very different objectives.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, I mean, every organization needs a leader, and there were two leaders in our company, and
Right.
so it was
Right.
really distracting for the employees.
Did you
And
share the CEO title? Did you do a co-CEO, or
no,
how did
well,
you
he
present
was
that?
the president, and
President,
I was
CEO.
the CEO. But
Yeah. Yeah.
really, because he was senior, he
Yeah.
wanted really all decisions to kind of roll up to him, and
Mm.
we tried dividing up sandboxes, and he was in charge of really like finance and operations, and I took over sales and marketing because I
Right.
was, at some point in time I was a sales manager as I
Yeah.
was making
You
my
came
way
out of
up.
that. Yeah.
And even that didn't help. We were
Yeah. Mm.
constantly into each other's sandboxes.
Yeah.
And so to, I know it's a long story, but there became a point in time where we had to sit down at the table. And I said, this is not going to work out. So,
Right.
you either buy me out, or I buy you out, or we hire attorneys,
Yeah.
or we sell. And, it was a very tearful moment for both of us. And,
Imagine. It's difficult.
he was like, you're buying me out. He's like, I'm not going to buy you out. So and then we spent the next year, working out the details and the
Right.
number and everything else. But that's how I really got to being the sole owner of the company.
Got
And
it.
that's
And how long ago was that?
that was
John?
in 13.
13.
I mean,
About
I think
7, 8 years.
officially it was 14 because there was some
Right.
seller financing in there, but yeah,
Right.
about 9 years.
So about halfway into your term as CEO, right? It's because
Yeah,
you've been CEO
right,
about 15 years.
right.
Yeah. 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 Good. And where was the company in terms of, kind of a range of sales back in 94, and where are you guys today, as well as in employees?
I think in 94 we were probably 2 million.
Yeah.
Now we're in that 15 to 20 million.
Nice. Nice. And how many folks are employed by you?
We're we fluctuate between 20 and 25 employees.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And God, still serving those large customers. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, tell us, you started, with some management responsibilities early on, right? I mean, was that kind of when you moved into the sales manager role, or when you first started working
Yeah. So,
leading people?
I mean, I and not to make the story sound even more interesting, but really when I started, I was like, an assistant to, to one of the sales guys, right? And then I
Right.
made my way into, a sales position and an account manager position, and did a lot of traveling. And then as we were growing, it was like, well, we need a bigger staff. And so, Bud just said, John would make sense as the sales manager to drive that. And then there was a small, Bud had done, a phantom stock for both David and I. David
Right.
was the other person. So
Informed
we
partner.
kind of looked at it at that point in time that we were the three-headed monster. It was the three of us, right? To go back to the Chicago Bulls, right? The three-headed monster.
Love it.
And so, and that was really working. I mean, we had this, right or wrong, three people, two could outvote the other one. And David and I really kind of ran the company like we owned the company, which was
Right.
really good. And there's moments that I think it really, when the stock was put out there, that was our first kind of look at the financials, which was exciting for us, just to not see top line, but see the net side of it.
Yeah.
And so again, small company, you just keep taking on more and more responsibilities. So I was the sales manager, and then something else got dumped on me, and then something else. And so, I mean, it was never termed a senior leadership position, but it became a senior leadership position.
Right.
And,
Kind of evolved that way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
How do you think your leadership style has evolved over those last 28 years?
What I grew up in, and I'm not judging. What I grew up in was really a command and control.
Sure.
Do what I say.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that. I mean, maybe it's growing up in a big family. But, I always kind of was like the mediator. I was always
Right.
trying to
Right.
mend fences and make sure everybody was okay. And
Yeah.
so even as like before I had a leadership position at the company, if somebody was struggling, I would want to kind of jump in and help.
Mm.
And the command and control just didn't seem like, you were doing like the softer side of the business. It was like, nope,
Right.
this is it. You don't like it, leave. This is what we need to do. This is how you get to it. Just do it. There wasn't a lot of creativity around it. So I would say over the 29 years, that's definitely how I've evolved. I mean, the way that we run our company now, we're in a couple of systems.
Mm.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Great Game of Business. It's about open book financial transparency.
Yep. I've got a
We
couple of clients that employ
we
that.
do that, and we also
Yeah.
do
Cool.
EOS,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and then
Do
I've
that as well.
also
Yeah.
done Small Giants, which is really about
Nice. Yeah.
servant leadership. So
Yeah.
that's really the way the company's been run ever since
Very
I've
collaborative, cooperative.
taken over. Is bottom up. Let's give everybody in the organization a stake in the outcome, good or
Right.
bad. Let's harness
Nice.
the wisdom of the crowd. It's not perfect, but I mean, it's a much better company.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we were at a toxic workplace when me and my partner were fighting.
Imagine. Yeah.
I go back to it was a business divorce, and instead of the kids suffering, the
Yeah.
employees were
The
suffering.
employees
So
do. Yeah.
yeah,
Right. It's the
right.
same thing. How would you best kind of define your company culture today?
Uh, well, I mean, the first thing that we really did, and I know a lot of companies do this, is you state your mission and
Right.
your core values, and you put it up on a poster, or you take it out of your desk every now and then, and we really scrapped that.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we just went through and we said, okay, we're gonna have more involvement on this, and we had everybody write on a post-it note 5 core values that
Mm.
like you would ask like who impacted your life. Well, I always think values are taught at a young age, right?
Right.
Priest, parent, whatever it is. So I mean,
Right.
everybody has them. So we said
Sure.
bring them to work, bring them to work, put them on a
Yeah.
post-it note. We did the exercise of everybody came up and they put their core values up on a whiteboard. And then we went through and we said, okay, this kind of looks like this, and this kind
Mm.
of looks like this, and we got it down to 6 core values, and we start
Nice.
every one of our meetings where we state our core values, and just not stated is why is this core value important to you this week,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then we changed our purpose. We always knew that this was our purpose, but we never really talked about it. Our purpose is to positively impact the lives of everyday people.
Mm. Love that.
And we looked at that because you were such an outward company, and what we really supply to these plants. This is not an advertisement, but what we supply to these plants makes sure that that person that goes to work goes home to his family and he's not hurt, right?
Yeah. Right.
And then we thought about that too, and we're like, well, how do we impact the people here at work? And that's it. We're here to really kind of enrich the lives of the people
Yeah.
around us, right? So
Yeah.
how are we impacting the people that sit next to us, right? Whether it's a new home, a new car,
Right.
maybe it's not even financial, maybe it's just emotional support,
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that.
What do they need? Yeah. Love that.
Right. Yeah. So I would say that's how our values have changed. I mean, we didn't even talk about that stuff. I mean, we wouldn't have talked about it back in 1994.
It's a big shift, John. I mean, that's
Right.
literally from like one end of the continuum to the other. So congrats with that. And
Yeah.
your
Thank you.
growth has shown it. So it's obviously working for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good to hear that. What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire, John?
For a lot of years, and we've got a guy who's been here for 20 years, and he's got a list of all the employees that have come and gone.
Wow.
I haven't seen it, right?
Yeah.
But we really made a conscious effort, about 2 or 3 years ago. It's a character thing. You hire for character, you teach and train the
Yeah.
rest. But we take it a step further now, where we do our weekly huddle with the Great Game of Business, and it's a really different way of running the company. And so we bring applicants in and we sit them down in our huddle, and they get to see what the business looks like.
Wow.
And we take our 2
Cool.
top applicants, and it's usually pretty good because the people that
Yeah.
participate are usually the ones that get hired.
Right.
And then you got 20 eyes looking at that person. They know whether it's going to be a good fit, right?
Yeah.
And there's also some people that they just, you get to that level, and we had 2 or 3 people over the past 3 years that they just said, it's really interesting, but I think I'm going to pursue something else. And we're like, fantastic.
Yeah, great.
That is
it
awesome,
works.
right?
Yeah,
We don't need you
right.
sitting in a chair, questioning what we're doing. We want you to participate.
Do you have a
So,
pretty good retention rate through that process?
We do.
Yeah.
We've let a couple of people go over the past couple of years, but
it happens. Yeah.
These were lifers, and they finally got to a spot where they weren't really drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak.
Right.
And we thought maybe it was a training issue, and then you just really realized at that point in time it was more of a mishire, or maybe more of a misalignment.
Right.
When they're not really thinking the core values are that important, then they're going to bring the rest of the group down.
Yeah. Don't need that. Do you have a favorite interview question that you use, John? And so, would you mind sharing it with us?
I don't. I really. I used to do a lot more interviewing, and I haven't done much recently. I think for me, usually when I get a chance to talk to the new employees, I do a lot of what you're doing here. Is I want to go back to understanding. So, like if it's an engineer, I always say, at what point in time did you realize that that's really what you wanted to do, right?
Yeah, right.
And the ones that it was really a good fit, because it's right chair, right person, right?
Right.
Is the person that says, "Hey, I took apart the VCR." My dad was really upset that I took apart the VCR. I put it all back together, and all the pieces were there, and
it worked.
Those are the good ones. Where if somebody says, "Well, I was kind of unsure, and my parents guided me into engineering," and you're not going to be passionate about it. It's not something that you're doing that you're going to love, right?
It's a great question. My son's an ME, and he's been doing battery design work, in the new economy, so to speak. And if you asked him, he'd say it's when I was 6. And my siblings and my parents would, give me the instruction book when things they couldn't figure out, and I would figure it out for them. And he's been doing that his whole life. So,
or I would say, did you grow up with Legos? And they'd say yes. And I said, did you follow the instructions, or did you freeform? Right. And so with an engineer, you really know pretty quickly. I mean, my son was the one that didn't freeform. He's an engineer. It was following the instruction booklet.
Right. Absolutely. Terrific. Well, John, we're just about out of time. This has been a very enjoyable conversation, but we always have one last question we always ask our CEO guests, and that's kind of, what career and life advice would you give someone maybe who has their eyes on the corner office someday, on the company they're in, or maybe wants to be an entrepreneur and run their own company someday?
Yeah. So this is something that it took me a long time to get to, especially as a CEO. Is I was always brought up to think that when you were in a leadership position that you had to be strong.
Yeah.
And I think really later on in life, what I realized, it's so much better to be humble and to tell people you don't have all the answers, right?
Yeah.
And to let the rest of the group help you. Sometimes
it's a motivator, John. It's a motivator to others, right? Yeah.
Some small businesses, especially smaller businesses, a lot of the CEOs or the owners, they feel like they've got to shoulder everything. And so I would just, that's always my advice is don't feel like you have to shoulder the work. I mean, you've got, a really great, talented group around you. Let them participate and be okay of letting people know you don't have all the answers.
Yeah. John Costello, President and CEO at Cherry's Industrial Equipment Group. Thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thank you, Brant. Really appreciate this.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.